Hey everyone, welcome to the Crossed Over Celebrity channel. My name is Tina Ducharme and I am a soul alignment coach. I help people expand their definition of who they think they are by teaching them about the soul contract and how it affects us in our lives. So on this channel, I team up with a celebrity who's crossed over to the other side so that we can take a look at their soul contract and bring through some messages from them for the current times that we're in to help guide us along our own journey of awakening and consciousness on the planet. So again, right now we're going through some very difficult energy, very difficult times. With the issue of the Ukraine situation, which everyone, of course, is talking about and is very focused on, because again, it brings up a lot of this inner conflict and just this idea of using force to take something that you think belongs to you. And today we want to I brought in Sir Winston Churchill to discuss these issues because he lived through it during his time in both World War I and World War II. And we'll talk about how his chart kind of worked for him, how it played out for him in those situations. But he was a very accomplished person and he learned a lot and he was not perfect. Again, all these celebrities that I bring through have that human side. There isn't, and I'm not bringing through ascended masters. I'm bringing through people just like you and I who are going through their life, trying to learn their lessons and gain a better understanding through their experiences. And he was no different. So again, the message is the wind of change. The song from the Scorpions came through on that issue, along with Sir Winston Churchill, to kind of talk about what type of change is needed and that it's coming, because whenever these types of conflicts, and there's been conflicts going on throughout the world at different times. This is not anything new. It happens to be a little bit of a different situation because now it's starting to hit a little bit close to home. And again, it's about this awakening in us and all of us about I really want to really kind of hone on the point of doing our inner work so that we can all find inner peace, because the more we can work on ourselves and find that inner peace, the more that is reflected into our reality. So it is through that work that we're all doing. People that are watching these types of videos are in the process now of really honing in on finding inner peace. Frequencies are raising. That's why you're seeing the outbreaks in these types of situations going on. And it's not about choosing sides, and it's about a coming together, a unity of coming together. And it's not so much about causing more separateness with hate and fueling this rhetoric and being totally against Russia and being all for Ukraine. This is really about the fact of really seeing kind of the bigger picture here and what's driving these forces. And I'll tell you what my opinion and what my truth is that this is really because I really feel consciousness is being raised through the unity of the global world, because we are a global society now, whether we want to say we are or not. We're all connected through our technology and we need each other for very different things. So what's happening is that people are trying to hold on to what they know, and the old paradigm of the patriarchal holding on to power taking more resources from others instead of, you know, this unity and sharing mentality. So it's really important to remember that we still need to have compassion, even for those that are projecting all of this old paradigm stuff onto others. It's really important that we still maintain our groundedness as light workers, and that we still are resonating in a higher level of consciousness, having compassion and empathy, but being very careful about those lower emotions of warring and hatred and spewing out. It doesn't mean that you can't feel anger or frustration because you know that what is happening is wrong. It's how we manage those emotions, and that we're not, again, trying to punish others as a way of us projecting those emotions onto others. So that's kind of I'm not sure I'm being real clear here. So we'll just get into the Winston, you know, that's why I brought Winston Churchill through, is to talk about this, because he's somebody who lived through it. He was a great leader. Yes, he had his flaws, and we will definitely talk about that and how his consciousness kind of raised throughout his life. And then he was able to do some very pivotal things as far as what he ended up accomplishing during his life. And that really gives us all hope in these times, so that we, you know, can look at what is a great leader. And it's about sovereignty, and it's about, again, not just being for what you believe in, but being for what is the good of everybody, and really starting to identify what leaders, because your leader should be a representation of the whole, not just your party or your ethnicity, or your, whatever your ideology is. So it's those are the great leaders, the ones that truly see their own faults and are opening themselves to listening to others. That's kind of the main component. But anyways, I will share my screen, and I want to get into the soul contract of Winston, so we can start to really dissect what was going on and what we can learn from it, because this is all about what can we do now to help the situation. No, I haven't been on for a couple of weeks. I've really been doing as much meditating, really hitting, getting together with groups, doing group meditations, doing group groundedness, sending out love and light, not just to Ukraine, but to Putin as well, trying to open up his heart, trying to open up, the Russian people, making sure that they understand their part and what they can do, and to start helping them see how taking back their power can be beneficial. So I've kind of been working on that the last couple of weeks, and now I feel it's time to bring in one of the big guns on the other side, somebody who can really give us some insight here. And so I'm going to share my screen. So this is Sir Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, born way back in 1874. Like I said, been through quite a few wars, and learned a lot of very valuable lessons through that. So he is coming through, he totally gets what's going on here, and he completely understands. But I want you to understand that he was one that could really see himself and others. And that meant he could see, he has this number, this 14-5, I want to bring up right away, and about being able to see yourself in others, whether it's good or bad. So when Hitler was starting to rise in power, he could really see what he liked about Hitler, and he could see what was kind of going wrong, and how he could see that even in maybe sometimes the way he acted, but understanding that even though we have these very egoic things going on, and this polarity that we live in, that he could see through some of that ego, so that he could still do what was right for everybody, and not where we saw Hitler and how he was consumed by the egoic side, where if you are, and the politicalness of that, if you're true, what we call a statesman versus somebody who's very political, which uses people for their own benefit. A true statesman is really for the people, as one of the people, and doing what's best for the majority of the people. So again, if you're new to my channel, first of all, thank everybody who's joining me, and I so appreciate anybody who's coming onto the channel and anybody who's making themselves available. Please like, share, and subscribe. Everything is free, and it's only about growing the channel to get out these messages to other people who might be interested in learning about these contracts and how they affected the individuals, because we all have one. And so I always put down a short introductory video in the description box below, in case you want to know how I put the charts together, so that I don't have to go into that every time. And so we have our spiritual side and our physical side, and we have karma, our opportunities for growth, our challenges that were given because we chose them. We choose our family, we choose our soul contract. And it's based on all of that these charts kind of work themselves out there. We come in as separate beings, but we are all united. Again, that's my belief, is the unity consciousness. And it was actually something that Winston was very much a part of during his life here. Was learning more and more about that, and I'll show you that in his chart. But again, when we pick our karma, whether physical or spiritual, it's really about what we want to overcome. And so that when I mentioned about this, this 14.5, about this, him learning about himself through others, that really was something he was meant to overcome. Our karma, we're meant to overcome it. It's not a punishment or anything like that. It's something a challenge we wanted to take on, so that we're going to get the negative aspects, which is what we would consider karmic, to help us to overcome it, because that's how we learn and grow. So I want to talk a little bit about his accomplishments. If you don't know too much about Winston Churchill, he was awarded the 1953 Nobel Prize in Literature. He was a very good writer, wrote a lot of books, for his mastery of historical and biographical descriptions and his outstanding defense of human values. He was a Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 1940 to 1945. He was knighted on April 24th, 1953, by the Queen as well, after he received his Nobel Prize. His father was an aristocrat. His mother was the daughter of a wealthy American, so he was of British and American ancestry. So that's kind of a little bit about just some of the some things that he accomplished, but there was a much more deeper level to him. He was a great leader, and it was because he was really good at speaking the truth. Not always, okay, because we're human, and I'm not saying, he wasn't an ascended master. He was learning, but when you have fives in your chart, he was a dominant 5. It is all about speaking your truth. And when you have it in karma, it's all about learning how to step forward into your truth and speak it and express it through primarily writing, which he did, and through actually your speech. Now, when we talk about the karmic side, you're going to get challenges to that, right? To that speech component. So he had a lisp, he had a speech impediment as a child. So he had to overcome that to be this great orator, which he was. He really inspired and motivated people through his speech, because he learned, again, we have these 7s, which is about healing the heart and opening the heart. He learned how to really connect through the heart with people. And that made him very magnetic. 13 4s, it's this great magnetic number, and so is the 7 7. So as he developed these skills, he was able to be very, very magnetic. what is the very negative side of these fives is these are very sensitive people. He was very psychic, but so he would be very sensitive to negativity and depression. And depression was something that he really struggled with and he wrote about, because fives are can be very empathic. And so they absorb the energies of others. And especially people that, fives have to be very aware of understanding that space clearing is important so that they can recharge their energy and get back to their center. And so because he wasn't really aware of this, there wasn't a lot of people like me doing soul contract readings that could talk to him about how important space clearing and eating right and stuff would be for him because of his sensitivity. He ended up a lot of times getting ill and going into the hospital many times over his life for different things because that was his overload and he needed to recharge and to get away from that. And so that was his body's way of making him get some space clearing, which he could have done voluntarily, if he was aware of it. So fives are also incredibly psychic people, although he was really struggled with his spirituality, because also the negative side of the fives is that they don't understand the intangibles. And what intangibles are is that spiritual side, the things that you cannot see, taste, touch. Again, he would have this distortion. And when he was younger, he was actually considered himself an agnostic, which is, again, I think I wrote kind of a description of, he believed the human reason is incapable of providing sufficient rational grounds to justify either the belief that God exists or the belief that God does not exist. And so that's all about understanding intangibles. But if you can kind of correlate that to, we know there can be harmful gases in the air that you can't see that can kill you. There's many things that we can't see or taste or touch that we know exist. So it's the same thing with kind of the spirituality. It's kind of knowing, really trusting that that there's more going on here than meets the eye. So he struggled with that and he chose that, again, to overcome that in his lifetime and to really start to hone his psychic and intuitive skills. Now, I do want to mention when I talked about how he was really subject to these energies of, he wanted to meet one time with Hitler. He was not liking his anti-Semitic rhetoric and this nationalism, this false nationalism where people fall into that thinking, we're, like America first. We all have pride in our country and that's okay. It's when it's becomes this, again, we're better than everyone. And so we're going to, get rid of everyone else. I think when I think about that kind of how that rationale works, I remember an old shamanic Indian saying, and they were so wise, and they brought so much to the earth and they understood the connection to spirit. And they talk about that a lot, about the tree doesn't cut off its branches, how we're all connected, but how as humans, we don't understand that connection. And so then the tree, it makes no sense to them as to why this tree of humanness we would cut each other off like that. And so it just reminds me of that. And then this negativity. So when he wanted to meet with Hitler, Hitler wanted nothing to do with him. And this is, again, that really egoic, when you've got two people who are on very different frequencies, somebody like Winston Churchill and somebody like Hitler, it's very hard for them to mesh because their energies are so out of vibrational, they just don't meet in the middle anywhere. So it was really funny. Hitler would not meet with him. And because I think Hitler, I have not done his chart, must have also been somewhat psychic and understood, your ego kind of, when is in charge, didn't want anything to do with anyone who was going to talk any type of reason to you. But what was really interesting about Winston Churchill was he got really sick. He had flown over to, I can't remember where he was. I don't think I wrote it down here. So he was, wherever he was, he ended up getting really sick and had to be hospitalized. And I think about that, him taking on, just even wanting to meet with him, and all of a sudden he's taking on this very negative energy, and he didn't realize it, that how much that would affect somebody who is as sensitive as he is. And so I thought that was just really interesting, that how sick that he got. So he was also very upset about how the parliament, at that time, he was not in parliament. He was kind of doing this on his own, and how they were dealing with these Hitler Mussolini types at that time. And his parliament was, at the time, was trying to go this, what was called the appeasement route, where they were just trying to negotiate, well, what do you want so that you don't invade or bother us, trying to say, we don't care what you do, we'll give you whatever you want, just leave us alone. And of course, this just totally went against everything that Winston Churchill stood for and what was in his chart here. This is not for the good of all. This is about self-sacrificing, self-preservation. And when you've got somebody like a Hitler or Mussolini, and you understand that the drive for them is to conquer all, that this is just a ruse. This is not something that stands in any integrity. It is not in any truth. And so he was very, very much against this. And the parliament ended up, the prime minister ended up resigning at that time, and they ended up voting Winston Churchill in, because people were knowing that is not the way we want to go here. And so when we look at his chart, I'm going to actually annotate my mouse here so you can see where I am. So, okay, so he's got this, we talked about kind of this karmic fives here, and this 14, this made him a very intense person, also made him very stubborn and a little reckless and impatient, that things that he had to deal with. But he had these super great talents. 12 threes are all about achievement. It was it was really giving him this great, also made him very intense, but in a way that he could, when he saw what he needed to achieve, it gave him this great ability to achieve that. And the sevens here in physical goals are all about uniting people, facilitating groups, not controlling them, uniting them for a common cause, which makes them stronger. When you unite, see, it's the links of the chain here. The more links you get, the stronger it becomes. And so these talents were all about him. Threes are all about this initiative, these great leadership qualities. It's about communication, him being able to communicate, which helped offset this list that he had, this speech impediment, because this gave him a great sense of self and great confidence in himself as he started to learn his lessons in life. Because he was considered himself, even at a young age, early, like 21, 25 years old, he was considered himself very liberal, but he was still struggling. Again, like I said, he was not perfect in his ideologies. And so he was opposed to the women's suffrage movement. He was part of this colonialism, imperialism, because again, fives are all about freedom. And so he was restricting freedom from others for self-rule. He thought, we know better, we can help take care of you and build a bigger, stronger, instead of letting people have their own cultures and their own ideas. He struck, again, he was this very imperfect person who was learning throughout his lifetime what that meant. And he was meant to do that because of those karmic fives of coming into that realization about everyone deserves freedom and sovereignty, which is really what Ukraine just wants to be, its own country, sovereign, part of the democracy. And it's really, he was part of that instrumental force that where they developed United Nations. And so this was part of the things that he helped to start to establish, and the importance for these alliances. And it's not about your power to overtake others. It's about standing in true power so that these other people who want to control everything and everybody, they can't do it. It limits their ability. So again, it's about uniting for the good of everyone. It's not about doing it for your own self-preservation. Again, and so that kind of that 14.5 was where he was struggling again with the equality, with the women's movement. And then he also, this is also about not acknowledging the talents of others, because they were involved with, you should know about the British colonization, and they were trying to go into India. And so he did not like Gandhi. Again, this is a big disparity in somebody who's at a higher level of consciousness, and Winston was at a lower level of consciousness at that time. And so he couldn't see what he was trying to accomplish, and he really kind of put Gandhi down, because they thought they should be taking over India and these other countries. And so he was learning his lessons as to why that was not the case. And he was a very young man again. And he entered the army. Okay, so he was, again, this is kind of part of this 12-3. Threes are tied to this Mars action. It can be warring, improper use of force. And again, the 12 is all about balancing and balanced expansion, growing, doing it in a balanced way that is for the good of the whole. So, but it gives us some great ability to achieve here. So the interesting thing is, so he ended up being in the army, even though his 11-2s in soul destiny create this, it's called the builder number. And so people who have 11-12s in their chart usually come kind of as what I've called this open container. And they're meant to build their own structure of truth, they're not to be following anybody else's way. 5s are also pioneer energy. So this gives him a great ability to kind of be his own person and kind of build his own truth. And it comes in very small chunks throughout his life. So he would, continue to learn and grow. So the 11-2s, the 2s kind of is this hidden judgment part, and it's this resiliency to failure. And so he ended up not, as a young man, he wasn't able to, he wasn't really good academically. And so it kind of, even though these people with 11-2s are very highly intelligent, they don't always fit into the model of the structure, the normal teaching. So they will be viewed as, he couldn't pass his entry into the, his dad wanted him to go to a military school, and it took him 3 tries to get in, because this is about building resiliency, failing. He failed as in the Navy, during the war with some of his actions. There was a lot of failure there. But this failure built his resiliency, and it was opening his consciousness. It also is about life to death cycles, and people with 11-2s can have people close to them die. His dad died when he was 21. He also had a daughter die at the age of 2. And what this does, and what this is meant to do for somebody with 11-2, is that death with somebody who's very close to us is meant to really break our heart open. And so that we can, again, have a greater level of compassion and start to really value life and understand that there's the bigger picture, right? And so he did have some of that kind of was playing out for him there. And so he did end up getting into that military school, was in the army. And so he, I told you he's part of this colonialism, imperialism with India and in South Africa. So he ended up, he was very brave. 5s give you a lot of courage. And so he wasn't like a leader who just is kind of like Putin, who isn't willing to put himself out there, right? He he was a POW because he was traveled to this conflict zone in South Africa, and because he wanted to learn more about what was going on and what they could do to overcome these uprisings that they were having. And so he ended up getting captured, and he, had that experience of being a POW, and he ended up escaping. And I'll attribute this directly to him, his high intelligence, this great expansion number, which gives him this great ability, but this kind of recklessness of the fives and being able to see outside of the box, which gave him the courage to, most people, when they're captured, they don't try to escape because they would fear being killed or, but he was learning through all of these. And the reason I know he was learning through that is because after that time, he really talked a lot about, he was getting a lot more lenient with individuals in these other countries that they were trying to, colonialize, or however you want to say it, trying to, make them better or whatever, that they really needed to be more tolerant to the people who were fighting back, and to be, more tolerant and to allow them to speak their minds. So he was really learning throughout his life and opening himself up to these new ideas. And that, again, the 12s gives him, it really gives him this thirst, the 12-3, this thirst for knowledge, and really be a bookworm. And he really would do his research and really was learning at a deep, deep level. And what helped him a lot as well was this 13-4 in spiritual talents, because that is all about the divine feminine. Now, we all have a masculine and a feminine side. And the feminine side is all about the maternal creation. This is what creates life. This is what makes countries flourish, is getting into this divine, nurturing, supportive energy. And this is about great wisdom. So what is the divine masculine? The divine masculine is all this courage and, paternal protection, and the will and the action to, to create something, where the maternal energies bring about these beautiful creative ideas, and they plant seeds and they give birth. It's the balance of the two. But this is all about great wisdom, and people will come to you. People really came to him there when Hitler was really taking over. It really became clear that this was a problem. And he also, at that time, at first when he met the president, Teddy Roosevelt, he really didn't care for him. But they ended up eventually uniting and being very great friends, and very much in alignment. And again, it was all about this learning and starting to see yourself in others and what they're trying to accomplish and how it relates to you. And so he was able to see those great things. And so, and through his 7/7s, being able to unite people together. So, excuse me. And so, again, he was in the army at different times, and he became very disillusioned with it because he did not like how the army at that time was treating the unmerciful treatment of the wounded, of enemy wounded, and also the desecration of religious monuments. This really disillusioned him because he did not feel that was right. People really liked Winston Churchill because he spoke his truth. And that was all about he came here to do that, to learn, and then to take action. 12-3, and how we can move towards those ideals in a sense of power, not necessarily a sense of force. So, okay, war is force, but we're going to talk how this all kind of comes together here. So he had this stint in politics as he got older, and he really kind of jumped around. He had this great psychic ability from the 5, so he could always kind of read which side he needed to be on to achieve what he was going after. So at times he would be elected under a liberal side, and then he crossed over to the conservative side. Or and then he would get elected under the conservative side, and then he'd cross back over to the liberal side. So he kind of did this little bit of bouncing back and forth. He started to go back into conservatism because he was seeing this kind of this socialism concept that was taking over, and he really was about free trade, and so he didn't like some things that socialism represented. So again, he was kind of flip-flopping back and forth. But I think that makes somebody a great leader, because I don't think you necessarily can be a great leader if you just identify with one side. I think the best leaders are those middle of the road that can bounce back and forth because they're not so restricted in one side. You know what I was saying? It's that flexibility. And it always drives me a little crazy when you hear like the media talk about somebody and how they flipped or they switched sides. And a person who grows should be able to change. And, you know, and the media will poo-poo that as, oh, they can't be relied on. They changed how they believed or they changed their position. But that's what debate and seeing things from all perspectives, you should be kind of flip-flopping a little bit, right? Not in a way where you're just like a politician who flip-flops. I think of somebody like a Lindsey Graham or somebody who's just looking for the current trend, not really standing up for any type of idealism. So I don't take that the wrong way when I say that. I just, and not again to throw Lindsey Graham under the bus, but I think we all know he's a politician. He's not a statesman. I think that goes without saying based on his, just how he projects himself. So we want to go to his, that 13.4, which is about, you know, he started to support this, and he created a great, you know, a lot of things that he was able to help put into place that really helped the greater good. And I want to go over some of that with this 13.4, because it's all about unity consciousness, doing for the greater good, that idealism. And so he ended up, again, I said, crossing back over to the liberal side. He posed what was called an alien bill at that time, which was designated to curb Jewish migration into Britain. And this is what he said. So he felt it was an appeal to insular prejudice against foreigners, to racial prejudice against Jews, and to labor prejudice against competition. And he expressed himself in favor of the old, tolerant, and generous practice of free entry and asylum to which this country has so long adhered and from which it has so greatly gained. So he recognized when you start trying to segregate yourself off from people, you're limiting the amount of what you can gain from others. So it's not about opening your borders to everyone, but it's about still having practices of free flowing people, because that generates you getting the best of everything. So he was considered a radical at times by his government, but he sought to ensure an equality between Britain and South African people, and announced the gradual phasing out of the Chinese indentured laborers in South Africa as well. So he introduced the Mines 8 Hours Bill, which legally prohibited miners from working more than 8 hours a day. He helped institute a minimum wage and the right to have meal breaks. He also instituted legislation to help people find work if they were unemployed. And he tried to tax the wealthy in order to help with poverty. He was overruled that at the time, but they did eventually put in a luxury tax. And I think that's something we need to look at as well. He also was instrumental in the reduction of the state pension age from 70 to 65, a provision for widows' pensions, reduction of military spending, income tax reductions, and then the taxes on the luxury items. So he was brought back into Parliament after the Norway debate, and that was all about this appeasement crap. And I'm going to call it exactly what it is. It was a bunch of crap to say, hey, we're not with you or against you. We're going to just let you do whatever you want. I am so glad to see with the whole Ukraine thing that there are more countries coming together on that, because it's super, super important, that unity, consciousness, and to stand in power. So, and he was brought back after that again, I said, because they knew they needed a strong leader, somebody the people could believe in, that were for them. So again, he was noted for his great speech that when Hitler did attack them, they were able to hold them off. And it was through the conviction of his words, because when you have a great leader, I believe Zelensky and Ukraine is a very great leader as well, that will always overcome somebody who seems to have greater ability. And so I'm going to read from the book Power versus Force by David Hawkins, where he references Winston as this great statesman that he became. Again, he became that. He wasn't always that. He became that through his lessons. Adolf Hitler assembled the greatest military machine the world had ever seen. On the simple level of force, his military was unbeatable, yet he could not defeat a tiny island across the English Channel because of the power expressed by Winston Churchill, who unified the will of the people through his principles of freedom and selfless sacrifice. And just like the president of Ukraine, everybody was involved, women, men, whoever was able-bodied. People are flying back there who had left the country to help. So Churchill, who calibrated at 510, which is on the consciousness scale, which is much higher than Hitler, stood for power where Hitler stood for force. When power and force meet, power always eventually succeeds in the long run. If it is deeply founded in the will of the people, power is immune to force. So it was awesome that he was able to live out his life, become more conscious in his ability. And he was brought back into, and then he was part of the 1942, the declaration by the United Nations, and about starting to build these coalitions between the nations. And I think we need to get back to that. And that is what's trying to show up with the whole Ukraine thing. So I think we can all hopefully see that as an opportunity now for us to align, so that we're not going to tolerate people being taken over, losing their freedom and sovereignty because somebody has a ideology that doesn't meet with theirs. So the other thing that I wanted to bring forth was the song, The Winds of Change, I talked about earlier from the Scorpions, and they had written this song back during the Cold War, and it is more prevalent than ever. So I'm going to put the lyrics in the description box below, and I hope that you all listen to it and think of, find your center and think of Ukraine, and give your compassion and love to the Russian people, that they also start to take their power back. And so this song talks about, I've got the lyrics right here. And he wrote this, the lead singer, what was his name? I can't think of it. Klaus was his name. And so he talks about, I follow the Moskva, which is the river in Moscow, down to Gorky Park, which is in Moscow, listening to the wind of change. He wrote the song while he was in Russia at the time where the Berlin Wall fell. An August summer night, soldiers passing by, listening to the wind of change. The world is closing in. Did you ever think that we could be so close, like brothers? The future's in the air, can feel it everywhere. I'm blowing with the wind of change. Take me to the magic of the moment on a glory night where the children of tomorrow dream away. in the wind of change. Walking down the street, distant memories are buried in the past forever. I follow the Moskva down to Gorky Park, listening to the wind of change. And then he says also in here, the wind of change blows straight into the face of time, like a storm wind that will ring the freedom bell for peace of mind. Let your Balakia sing, that's a Russian guitar, what my guitar wants to say. It's just a beautiful song, and I feel it, the change is coming, and I give my love and compassion to the Ukraine people and the strength and, all of us standing in our light so that they can overcome, because this is their moment to bring us all together. And so Winston's going to help us pull some cards as to how we can relate all of these things together. And so I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And so we're going to pull some oracle cards. All right, Winston. All right, so we're going to start with the secret language of light. So the first card to come out is meditation. Again, we just talked about that, how important meditation is, clearing your energies. It's not about, and I have nothing against prayers when you're asking God and the angels to help, but it's really about all of us standing in our light, feeling the peace within that creates the peace without. So that's where meditation comes in, and is finding that centeredness of peace, and then picturing yourself in Ukraine and emanating that peace out, or in Russia. And so he's saying meditation is critical right now in this time, because it's important for us to not fall into these fear, because again, with law of attraction, fear just creates more fear, which creates this really bad cycle. So we're going to the sacred destiny delight. Okay, so the bird comes out, delight I've before. So this is all about sparrows and the spring grass. The sparrow gains its powers from its numbers. Again, we're talking about uniting in numbers. It's clusters, sparrows eat and forage, and predators are distracted and deterred because they're in numbers, even intimidated by their numbers. Security and joy in numbers is a lesson of the sparrow. Within their community, sparrows are always busy, living life fully. Many cultures align with the meaning of the sparrow with joy, and in the Middle Ages, the sparrow was thought to relieve suffering, help one triumph over hardships, and brings joys. So this is about finding some joy, but again, in numbers. Beautiful card. Thank you, Winston. So we're going to go to the Oracle of the Fairies, a new deck that I just got, which I find it's so beautiful. The cards are just lovely. And this is about transformation. Oh, and it has the butterflies. So I'd like to mention at this time that Winston bred butterflies. He was so into transformation, was he not? What a symbol of transformation. And so this fairy tells you to surrender to a transformation in your life that's happening for your highest good. Embrace your transformation. The best is yet to come. So remember, the best is yet to come here. We need to believe that. And that transformation is, we're witnessing history. The transformation is here. Gorgeous. So now we're going to the Work Your Light Oracle, what we can do. Ooh. So Anna, the grandmother of Jesus, is coming forward, seeding the light, laying foundations and a divine plan. So there's a bigger thing going on here, and I always felt that it was. And here is the great mother, right? The grandmother of Jesus, that divine feminine energy, those maternal creator. Let's create something beautiful from the seeds of all of this destruction. laying new foundations. There is a divine plan. I'm going to ask, okay, talking to heaven. So let's get a message directly out of Winston here. Thank you so much for the great. One of my favorite cards. If I had only known then what I know now, I would have lived differently. And so he can see that in himself when he was here, what he knows now, and especially about that supporting energy of the warring and force and not, he said, not supporting and understanding what Gandhi was trying to accomplish with his nonviolent, nonconformity model, which worked against the British. So more than one way to get that things working in our direction. It isn't always through this violence. Although I support Ukraine and everything they're doing, I'm not about violence, but I am totally in support of them defending themselves. And I think the Russians are really struggling. That's the one thing that they don't have, is that these are their brothers and sisters. And although I know for some will be blind to it, but there's a lot of Russians in the army that are really struggling with this. And so 37 comes through. 3 and a 7, that was in his chart. The 8 was snapped. The 8 is tied to manifestation, karma, light and dark, and the polarity. And so that's why Winston wanted to bring that 8 out. This is lion spirit. And this, to me, really showcases that spirit that was Winston Churchill, and to be generous of spirit. So he wants me to read. So I will. A healthy ego means you ease God's order instead of edging God out, which is the ego, ego, edging God out. But a healthy ego is easing God's order. Lion spirit's appearance is a reminder that you have been given the gift of pride and a healthy sense of your worth to express your divine, authentic self in a unique way. You are both the king and the queen, secure in your prosperity and wisdom, and generous of spirit as you help others. Take pride in your ability to serve from the heart. Contentment with what you have right now allows you to use your resources wisely as you give to others in ways that educate, heal, inspire, and delight. Be proud yet humble. Practice gratitude, and you will find that the accolades that come to you are no match for the joy of knowing what you have been able to do for others through expressing the bounty of generosity within you. Lion spirit knows there is a great savannah before you, and many who will benefit from the healthy expression of your unique set of gifts. If you choose to work in partnership with spirit, all your relationships flourish as you express your worth and generosity of spirit with humility and kindness. What a blessing you can be to all. And he was a blessing to all. And in his speeches, if you read them, and I really highly recommend that you do, this wasn't somebody who we talked about how great he was. He always gave credit to the people doing the work, to the, he had talked about in one of his speeches about how a few people can make such a big difference. And that was his Air Force, that the few of them were saving many people. And he also gave credit to the United States for being in alliance with them and helping. He just, that's a true leader he's not taking credit for anything. He's just saying the truth of how this is. It's those leaders that take credit for everything are the ones you should be the most skeptical of us, because most of us don't get to where any type of achievement by ourselves. It's usually through a lot of other people. He wasn't bragging about, being knighted or Nobel Prize or any of that stuff. All of that stuff is gained from selfless service, not expecting it, not trying to get it, It comes through service. And so that's how it truly manifests. But we are going to look at the archetype cards, because this is that light and dark. Let's see what he would like to bring forth here. So he's got the shapeshifter card. And he was very much a shapeshifter. His psychic ability to know where he needed to be to create the most, whether it was on the conservative side or the liberal side, to create the greatest amount of change that benefited the most people. So it's a skill at navigating through different levels of consciousness, ability to see the potential in everything. Now, the dark side of that is projecting any image that serves your personal agenda in the moment. So again, if you think about Mussolini and Hitler, and I want to say Mikhail Gorbachev was a great leader. He knew his humanness. He also received a Nobel Peace Prize. People saw him as weak, and he was not weak because he recognized his fault. And that is not a weakness. It's the ones that don't recognize their faults that are the weakness. So it's really about us raising that level of consciousness so we can see through that. What a wonderful. So we're going to the wisdom of the oracle, a little bit more wisdom from Mr. Sir Winston Churchill. Serendipity comes through. I'll have to read about this one. And it's the clover, and she's taking a leap of faith and being pulled up into the air. So let's see what this is all about. And again, we're seeing this 8, a 1 and an 8 here, 9 for endings in that karmic side that he's trying to bring forth. So the essential meaning is opportunity allied with readiness, the awareness of synchronicity, luck and good fortune appearing as signs and symbols, a magical alignment of events. So this is about believing in the magic and that 4-leaf clover. Trusting in the flow of abundance. He had the 4 in his chart and his talent, so he had a great trust and things would work out. You stepped into alignment with the greater good, where your dreams and the collective dreams resonate in exquisite harmony. Now is the time for luck and preparation to meet and create miracles that you could never have planned all by yourself. Keep in mind that you are a channel for providence right now, as a higher energy uses you as a force on behalf of the whole world. Your fortune becomes everyone's fortune. Everything you bring into being now will leave a wondrous legacy for others in the future. Your service to the world is being supported at this time. Expect the unexpected and smile, for Spirit loves you very much. Staying in your light. Love that message. That was gorgeous. Thank you. All right, so we're going to Archangel Metatron. And so we got more magic coming through. A 5 and a 4 on this card. Higher realms. Lilac, that purple. I was getting purple rain too from Prince today coming through. Because that's all about, purple is the high consciousness color. It's, you know, it's the pathway. It speaks of ascension and magic, as it says on the card. So we're going to go to the Mastery, the Self-Mastery book here by Amanda Ellis. She's also doing a great job speaking up at this very difficult time. When did you stop believing in magic? We need to bring the magic back. As a child, you once knew that anything was possible, that dreams could come true, and that spirit was real. Maybe you saw things you couldn't understand or failed to make grown-ups believe, but you could see it was real. The fairies under the tree, the angel at the bed, or the relative in spirit sitting beside you, or you may have a child in your life right now who can see and sense this. It may also be that your inner child needs to rediscover this sense of wonder now too. So often we start believing, and then the heaviness of life can squash and diminish our ability to believe in magic and the happily ever after story. Disappointments, betrayal, loss, war, leave their mark. And today you are asked once again to look up and wonder what is possible for you and what is possible for all of us. The lilac ray comes to remind you that the world of magic is all around you. You are asked to release your attention from the humdrum of ordinary life and the warring going on, and to believe in something extraordinary and out of this world again, for it is as real as anything else, much discovered through the layers of consciousness and light. You are asked to lift your eyes to the stars rather than look down at the ground when you feel stuck or uninspired. The realm of magic and enchantment is everywhere. The search for gold at the end of the rainbow, the glow of the moon, fairy rings, the underwater world of coral reefs, the dew on the grass, the twinkling of the stars. As children, we believed in fairy tales. We looked up to princesses and princes and sat open-mouthed at visions of fantasy. To have reached the moon, man needed to have looked up and dreamed it was possible. You too need to reach higher, dream bigger, and feel the magic of life stirring around you. Believing in the angelic realm also brings much comfort and support at this time. Meditating on the lilac angelic palace of this card. Oops, where did I put it? The lilac angelic presence of this card, of the palace on this card, I'm sorry, helps you to attune and connect into this reality and to feel angelic presence around you. This is Metatron at his softest, his most gentle, and his most magical. Lilac is also a powerful purifier. So allow it to dissolve any negativity or sadness around you, as well as any fear of opening up to higher realms. The lilac ray also asks you to question what you believe. We should all question our beliefs. Chosen by deeply spiritual people who are often called to serve spirit in some way, you may question aspects of spirituality, angels, and source energy. Maybe you have had moments of doubts and crises of faith. The lilac ray will put you magnetically back to explore more, question more, and seek deeper truths. It is your soul calling to you to remind you that you are more than just a physical body. You are a soul leading a physical life, not the other way around. You may also use this lilac energy to bring balance where you have been out of equilibrium, containing both the red and blue rays. Lilac effortlessly calms and balances two separate ends of the color spectrum and can now support, heal your body, mind, and spirit. A powerful, transformative, magical ray. Connect to lilac and let it remind you that all stories start with once upon a time. We want that happy ending for the people of Ukraine, for everyone around the world struggling. And that includes the Palestinian and the Israeli conflict as well. He's wanting to mention that we forget about that ongoing, that lack of a resolution of people really coming together, honoring each other, trying to find a solution that benefits everybody. So we're going to end this. So honored to have Sir Winston Churchill here. And we're going to end this with a Metatron healing mantra. And this is exactly what he stood for, inspiring others. Just totally, you can't make this stuff up. They come through and they bring their messages. And so I'm just so grateful. Thank you. So the mantra for inspiring others is, we're going to say this 3 times, so please repeat after me. I help others feel empowered by acknowledging their gifts. I help others feel empowered by acknowledging their gifts. I help others feel empowered by acknowledging their gifts. Oh, what a perfect mantra to end from somebody who inspired many, became a great leader, speaker, writer, everything that was in his karma that you're supposed to overcome and do. And then his soul destiny was that 11-2, and that was all about building a structure of truth and sharing it with others. and be in your expression. And so he learned a lot from that life here, and he said he's ready to come back. Yay. So he will, I'm sure, add to his great wealth of knowledge that he gained in this last incarnation. And I'm sure if he's hasn't incarnated, he's going to be close. I get the feeling he's going to be close to incarnating. So we got some newbies coming in that are going to be quite spectacular, but we all are quite spectacular. He wants to know that it's not just one person or this, but it's all about picking leaders that reflect who you are and reflect the good of all. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to match you exactly. That's not it at all. So again, thank you for joining me. I encourage everybody to meditate at this time, anchor your light. It's so incredibly important. Send your love and your healing to all of the people of Ukraine and Russia, also to Putin, asking him to open his heart, and so that we can have some type of a resolution and get him to open up to a higher level of consciousness, because miracles are possible. So thank you for being here. I'm sending you so much love. So take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.